the mud of the First World War was left far behind, the boys came home to an era so new that it turned to a roar. The 20s, the jazz age. It promised so much, and hockey was part of it all. New and fast, expanding across the land. Boston, Chicago, New York, St. Louis, the fans, the converted, pledged loyalty. Renewed and invigorated, the game held its course, and the seeds of the dynasties began to grow. Great players held the limelight, now broadcast wide to the world by wireless, the radio, household names, men you knew, men you could rely on, heroes that gave you hope, legends that gave you heart.
Says, you Ted Lindsay? And I said, yes, sir. He says, you ever think about playing in the National Hockey League? And of course, you know, your eyes open up and you smile. And what answer do you give? But other than yes.
Just hit us all like a ton of bricks. How would you feel if I wanted to turn your son pro? And I just about fell off the chair, and my mother lit up like a Christmas tree.
I stayed in Guelph for 3 years, and on my 4th year as junior, the Rangers turned me pro, so it was the nicest time of my whole career.
I was so scared, not scared of the players, but scared to make a mistake to those guys. They were just like God to me. Which maybe I shouldn't say that because God is bigger than them. But I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Sitting in the same dressing room with the Montreal Canadiens.
I was playing center. On the right wing I had Ivan Cournoyer, and left wing I had Frank Mahovich. I don't have to tell you how much nervous I was.
Going to training camp, I got more advice from different people, but be careful now. The fellas in that National Hockey League, they're going to cut your throat wide open because they're afraid you're going to take their places from them. That wasn't so whatsoever.
Really, the boys were all very good to me. They're Bill Cook especially, and Frankie Boucher and Bunny Cook, and they were all real good.
I remember Charlie Conacher coming over to me and saying, you know, kid, it's just another game. And don't get nervous, and don't forget we're always behind you.
When the first blows of war echoed across North America, the NHL knew it would once again be facing hard times. Players north and south of the 49th parallel answered the call of king and country. Teams that had been born with enthusiasm quietly faded away, and in 1942, the New York Americans were the last to go. Yet the world still needed champions, and during the war years and beyond, the clubs that survived still gave fans something to cheer about. Although the league had seen franchises come and go, these remaining teams would become known for all time as the Original Six, the cauldron that would forge the men of steel.
I guess I took a lot of beatings from my two brothers. But my oldest brother, his skates fitted me better than my other brother. So I'd steal the skates while they were in school, and they'd come home and the skates would be wet, and I'd get a slap in the ear. But that's the way it was, and we always had ice in our backyard. My father used to flood the garden when the garden went off in the fall and the cold weather come in. He always had a patch of ice out there, and we fooled around out there, and so I guess I was skating when I was 5 and 6 years old.
Clint Smith was born in Saskatchewan in 1913. Like most kids, he dreamed. And in 1932, a Rangers training camp made his dreams come true.
I took my skates and all my hockey paraphernalia down, and The first practice we went out, I had my automobile D's. In those days I used to call them wire skates. And my shorts were little basketball shorts. And in those days, pompadours were quite popular, you know, with the young fellas. And you'd flop it down and come down to your chin and flop it back up. And so you used to wear a baseball cap to keep it out of your eyes.
But Lester Patrick, the Rangers' boss, wasn't too keen on Clint's hairstyle, and he was soon off to the hairdressers.
And of course, I think he'd set it up with the barber on the way down, because boy, I had the best crew haircut you ever saw. And I wasn't too happy about that either.
Once over the shock, Smith never looked back in his 7 seasons with the club. In 1940, he was part of the historic Stanley Cup winning team.
And the old Ranger bunch, the old saying was, once a Ranger, always a Ranger.
Closing in on the Leafs goal, a pass in front to Clint Smith and Kurt Broda.
Although a Ranger at heart, Clint Smith finished his career with Chicago, where he soon won his second Lady Byng trophy.
I was a pretty good skater, and I could move. So I took a lot of practice on my own. Well, then with the stick handling, I used to stick handle a lot. So it got to the point where I thought, well, if I can do these things, there's no reason why I can't skate up that ice and score a goal.
Charlie Rayner came out of Saskatchewan, big guy, and the remarkable thing about Charlie Rayner is that he was a great skater. This is a true story. The only goalie I ever heard of in a game who scored a goal on an end-to-end rush.
It was a funny story. The penalty boxes were full. We were playing the Army. And the penalty box was full. There was only 3 players in each team. And the puck hit me high on the chest and bounced out. And I seen this thing bouncing, and there was nobody there. So I said, hey, let's go. So away I went.
Grabs the puck, goes straight down the ice, wrist shot over the goalie, Charlie Rayner. Scored a goal.
Bonnie Prince Charlie Rayner came to the NHL from the eccentric Eddie Shore's Springfield Indians. Rayner backstopped the New York Americans for 2 years, until 1942. But when World War II ended and the NHL got back to business as usual, Charlie Rayner signed up with the New York Rangers, where in 1950 he won the Hart Trophy as the most valuable player in the league.
I think one of the tougher individuals I played against as a goaltender would be Charlie Rayner. He's a Saskatoon boy, and it was funny, I was going for a milestone goal and we're in New York, and he winked at me at the face-off and he points up like high here, and I shot and up with the hand, he caught it and he looked at me and says, harder. So he sucked me in real good. But he is he's a tremendous goaltender, as you know, for years, a big man.
Big teddy bear Chuck. Great hockey player, terrific guy. Never saw him mad in my life, ever.
I think the hockey world is a great world. Great world. It's a great game. It worked out real good. I think it was a great experience, wonderful experience. I wouldn't trade it for all the money in the world.
My mother was a widow lady, and she worked, one of the many things she did to keep the family together was she ran the confectionery stand in the local arena. And I spent a great deal of my time in the arena, and every time there was a vacancy on the ice, I'd be out on it. I was in my class at school when the principal came and asked me to come to his office, and I came to his office, and on the phone was Nell Stewart phoning me from Toronto and said, Hap Day and Frank Selke Sr. would like to talk to you at the Gardens this evening. And this one might have been about 2:30 in the afternoon. You can catch a train out of Welland at 4 o'clock. You'll be at the Union Station at 6 o'clock. I'll meet you there and we'll go right up to the Gardens. Mother was more interested in me getting an education. And when I came back and said that the Leafs would like me to sign a pro contract with them, she wasn't all that enthusiastic. And anyway, my heart and soul was bent on becoming a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Teeter Kennedy's dream came true, and for 15 years he battled his heart out for the Toronto Maple Leafs. "Come on, Teeter," was the famous battle cry. A strong face-off man, Teeter Kennedy could always be depended on to come up with the big play. A hard worker, he captained Toronto through a glorious decade.
I admired his efforts in the game, and I don't think I ran into anyone in my lifetime put more effort into a game than Ted Kennedy.
A real warrior who never gave up. He led his team to 5 Stanley Cups. But for Teeter, his most memorable moment was being presented to visiting royalty in Maple Leaf Gardens in 1951.
It was a very, very funny feeling for me. And I'll tell you what I was running through my mind at that time, and I've never mentioned this to anybody else. I'm saying to myself, here's a kid from a little village of Humberston, Ontario, being presented to the Queen, and that was really quite a thrill. It really was.
In 1957, he hung up his Leafs jersey for the last time. The ever-modest Teeter had done Toronto proud.
Gordie Howe brings the fans in the building, but Rocket's got them on their feet.
Well, the first time I remember seeing Rocket Richard play, he scored 2 goals and broke his leg. And after the game, I was in the dressing room. This is a childhood memory of mine. I was 9 years old. And they were talking about this young player who had by now had been taken to the hospital. And Toe Blake was saying, you know, when he carries the puck, he keeps his head down too much. He carries it behind him and he never sees he's going to get killed, this guy. I mean, he's never going to make it. He's going to get killed.
Dick Irvin Sr., the Montreal coach, disagreed. Not only is Maurice Richard going to be a star, but he's going to be the biggest star in hockey history. All it needed was a change of position to secure his future.
When they moved them from left wing to right wing, he made a success of himself. Because the first night they put him on right wing, he scored 2 goals. And at that time there was rumor that they might trade him to New York Rangers. That was forgotten after that night.
With Maurice was Elmer Locke at center, Toe Blake at left wing, the outstanding punchline, where Richard's speed did not go unnoticed by his teammate Roy Getliff.
Getliff said, look, it's like I said the other day, this guy takes off like a rocket. So the players started to call him Rocket.
There never will be, I'll say this, but the Rocket, there will never be a hockey player that will match the Rocket from the blue line in. I don't care if they play hockey for another 1,000 years. People who have never seen this gentleman play could never understand the strength and determination that he had.
When Rocket picked up the puck, or it was given to him inside the opposing team's blue line, the sparks just flew out of his eyes, and nothing was going to stop him. He was going to get that shot away one way or another. From all sides, backhand, front hand, on his stomach, on his knees. He was just something really special inside the other team's blue line.
The Rocket was lethal. In his second season, he notched up 32 goals, and just to show his talent was no fluke, the next year he went on to become the first player ever to score 50 goals in one season. It was a historic moment for Maurice Richard.
I think God sent him down to show everybody how to score goals through desire. He wasn't the greatest hockey player. He was the greatest goal scorer.
Year in, year out, Maurice Richard's determination and killer instinct were the scourge of every goalkeeper in the National Hockey League.
There's one thing in my whole career that I'll never forget, that every time I had a chance to have a breakaway or a chance to be alone with the goalie, I tried to remember what kind of shot I made on my first goal. I never did the same movement twice. I tried to change another way to score goals.
He never shoot in the same place. It's on the ice or through your legs or on the up high or low. He had your goalie guessing all the time.
He didn't care. He was like a train. And I remember I used to be a pretty big goaltender. And I thought, if I can ever get close to him, why, there's no way he's going to score because I'm not going to let him around. And I tried everything.
Well, his obsession was to put that puck in the net, even if it meant pushing the goalkeeper in. He'd even do that.
That's all I had in mind, to win games and win scoring goals. And I enjoyed that. If I had one game I had 4 or 5, 7 or 8 shots or 10 shots at the net, if I didn't get any goal, then I was mad. I couldn't sleep the rest of the night.
I guess you'd have to class him as the greatest clutch player in sudden death overtime. He always, that kind of pressure he loved.
There could be no better place for Rocket Richard than the pot-boiler world of the NHL. 8 Stanley Cup victories showed what a truly great competitor he was.
I would say if he was playing in today's hockey where there's 6, 7, 8 goals a game, that I would be willing to bet any amount of money the Rocket would get 100 goals a year with the way he played. The guy was unbelievably strong, and the desire to go from the blue line to that net was unbelievable.
Three days after Christmas 1944, the Rocket moved house, but that didn't stop him setting a new record.
Well, we hired a truck to move our furniture, and we got the truck late at night, and we did all the moving till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I slept for maybe an hour or 2, if I did. I don't know, I don't remember. But I went to the forum and I felt sore. Moving furniture and playing hockey is not the same. I was sore all over. So I came to Dick Irvin and I asked him to not to play. I didn't want to play. I said, I feel too bad to play the game. He says, don't worry, you'll be able to score a few goals, even if you're sore all over. So I played that night, and every chance I had in front of the net, I got a goal. I had 6, 7 shots, and I had 5 goals. So that's the way it goes.
Rocket's whole 18-year career was groundbreaking. In 1957, the Montreal Forum erupted as Maurice Richard became the first player to score his 500th NHL goal.
And he was capable of exploding. Those eyes of his used to just light up. They were like red coals. And great hockey player. Hated his insides like he hated mine, but we'd become pretty good friends after it took many years for the ice to melt.
I respected the man the most. I thought Rocket was, and I'll take my hat off to him today, I think he carried the league for quite a few years. I think he's responsible for bringing the popularity of that game to a certain level. So I would say Rocket left the game in a great shape for Gordie Howe to make a living, and he set the goal.
Kids today, they were not even born when he was playing, and they seem to know Maurice Richard because their grandfather, their father told them that he could carry the team on his shoulder. That was a big point, that was the big fact with Maurice Richard. He could carry the whole team on his shoulder.
Rocket retired in 1960. 544 goals, the Hart Trophy, and 8 Stanley Cups. One of the all-time greats, a real legend of his time.
Henri Richard was always the Rocket's brother. Even today, he goes on the street, he is still the Rocket's brother. This guy is a Hall of Famer. Always been known as a Rocket brother.
I always remember my father used to say, people used to talk to my father and then say, Maurice is a great hockey player. Well, he used to say all the time, he said, wait, he said, I got another one. Little Henry, he said, these would be much better than Maurice.
Henri was a
a tremendous hockey player. He's one of those players that come up not very often, like the Orrs, like the Keons, and like the Mahavliches, Lafleurs, and Belivos. And he came right in that first year and played with his brother and Dickie Moore, and never looked back for the next 20 years.
Nobody ever expected him to make the team that first year. And as Toe Blake mentioned during training camp, he says, I had no plans for this kid. He says, but every time you look up, the kid's got the puck and nobody can take it away from him. So I think he's going to make this team.
He was a type of hockey player that never missed a game. Even when I played before him, for 15, 13 years, he never missed a game. He used to come and sit on my father's knee, watch all the games that I played.
My hero was my brother Maurice, and I wanted to do exactly like what he did. Play hockey with Montreal Canadiens. That was a dream.
1955 was the year that young Henri Richard finally achieved that dream. But in truth, Henri had never been very far from the mind of the Montreal management.
I was asked to go and see Mr. Selke upstairs, and of course I couldn't speak a word of English, so Maurice came up with me, and as we went in, Mr. Selke asked Maurice, do you think Henry is ready to play with the team? Maurice said, of course, he's ready to play, and I like to see him play. And he just walked out, and Mr. Selke made me sign a contract, a piece of paper, which I signed, and I didn't even know how much I was earning. So.
First of all, Henry was very quiet. He was not the type of a player who would yell the loudest in a room. Henry, all through his life, went through his career, and it was not easy. I remember after games, wherever we went, people would come to the table and say to Henry, "How's Maurice?" Henry always answered very politely, and like he did on the ice, he played his own game. But it took years and years and years before fans and maybe members of the press were the first one to recognize that Henry was a different type of player, but such an asset for a team. Henry played for 20 years. He was very strong physically. You don't have to be tall to be strong.
Well, I think if you were to measure a man's heart, then Henry probably would have been about 10'6".
One night in the Boston Garden, he beat up 3 guys. He was young at the time, and we all thought that the Rocket was there to protect his younger brother, but he could take care of himself. He had a great career, mainly because he had fire in his heart, just like his old brother.
A great competitor, a guy that came to play every night. I could see it, like he'd never really smile. When he scored a goal, he never really get excited, but there was no such thing as a big guy in front of him.
We had great hockey player, great team, and I was kind of being at the right place at the right time. I say that often, but which is a little true. Anywhere else, I don't think I would be able to win 11 Stanley Cup.
A quiet leader, Henri Richard's record speaks for itself. 11 Stanley Cups, 5 of them in a row. Unequaled.
Frank Selke once told me, we were discussing the Canadiens, this mystique for winning by the Montreal Canadiens. And he said to me, he says, over the years, I've been blessed with a great number of superstars. He said, but game in, game out, he says, I think the most valuable player I've ever had was Henri Richard. Now that is about as huge a compliment as you can give any player, anywhere, at any time, in any era. And it was well deserved.
When you walked into the Montreal Canadiens dressing room, you were walking in on gold. Your eyes are flashing like a flashlight. Your eyes open wide, and you said to yourself, What am I doing here?
Boom Boom Geoffrion, was to hockey shooting what gunpowder was to warfare. I mean, forget about the bows and arrows, forget about the spears. This is explosion. And I'll never forget it, because when he came to the Canadiens, they already had a pretty good team. They had a lot of good young guys, and we're at Madison Square Garden, we're watching them play the Rangers, and all of a sudden the Canadiens have a power play. This guy, number 5, is at the right point. What the heck is he doing at the right point? Puck goes to Doug Harvey on the left point. He passes it across to number 5, and all of a sudden I knew why his nickname was Boom Boom. He wound up. This was unheard of. Winding up, looking like he's playing golf, whacks the puck, and it goes in. And this was the slap shot being introduced to the NHL.
The reason that I start this, and one game I missed the puck, and I got mad. And all of a sudden, I just slapped my stick to the puck, and I said that thing took off. I said to myself, I said, uh-oh. I says, here it is. This is when I'm going to start now. And I start to practice the slap shot. I used to put a dummy in the net. I used to right corner, left corner, bottom, the middle. And I tried to perfect that thing.
The slap shot changed hockey forever. And there it was, the Boom Boom. Nobody copied Boom Boom for a long, long time, because everybody thought it was a joke for a while. But he kept scoring with it, and the goalies, of course, were so frightened they eventually went to the mask.
Terry Sawchuk was terrified. Gump Worsley couldn't believe this. And all of a sudden, the coach didn't like it. I didn't care. I was scoring goals with it. Why change my style with the slap shot? After a year that I had the slap shot discovered, everybody started using it.
Boom Boom's slap shot would win him the NHL scoring title. And in 1961, he joined Rocket Richard as only the second man to score 50 goals in one season.
Great player. Had his heart as big as a mountain. I mean, here's a guy who 5 weeks before the end of the regular schedule had an accident during a practice, and he was choking to death. I think his intestines burst, and they delivered the last rites over him at the hospital across the street. And 5 weeks later, he was on the ice scoring 2 goals against the Boston Bruins in a playoff game.
I don't think I was a natural. As a hockey player, like, for instance, Beliveau or Dave Keon for skating. I was a natural as a stick handler. I was a natural as a shooter. I could put the puck in the net. That's something that I had as a talent. A lot of people are great hockey players, but they cannot find the net. I could find the net every angle. I want to be humble when I say that. But I always did have confidence. When somebody would score 2 goals, I said to myself, I'm going to get 3.
Bernie Boom Boom Geoffrion had shown that sort of determination since he was a small boy growing up in Montreal. And that, together with his natural hockey talent, made him an integral part of the greatest ever Montreal Canadiens dynasty of the 1950s.
Pound for pound, and for a length of career and the ability he had and his knowledge of the game, I always picked Jacques Plante as the best of all the bunch. Just a shade above a guy like Sawchuk, just a shade above Perron, just a shade above these people. But he was that shade above.
Jacques was a different guy. He loved to knit. The first time I saw him knit a toque, I couldn't believe it.
Jacques Plante was a loner. Reading and knitting were his pastimes. In his 19 years in the game, he donned the pads for 5 NHL clubs. But in goal, he was fearless. However, having watched his opponent's shots get faster and higher, Plante decided it was time to develop a mask.
I remember the time that Toe Blake quoted in the paper saying that Jacques Plante is a little bit puck shy. And he says that's why he's making, you know, more or less working on a mask. And actually it wasn't true. Jock says he had one head and he wanted to keep it, and that was it.
The first time that he wore the mask in a game was at Madison Square Garden, a slap shot from Andy Bathgate to hit Jacques right on it. I'm telling you, his nose was there. So he went to the clinic, and when he came back, it was a mess. But Jacques said, I'm ready to go back, but I have to wear my mask. And no way, looking at Jacques, that the toe could say no.
Told Blake, who made no secret of the fact that he hated Jacques Plante and was responsible for Jacques Plante's trade to the New York Rangers, said to me once, in the 5 years that the Canadiens won their consecutive cups, he said, Jacques Plante was the best goaltender I ever saw.
His honors included 1 Hart, 7 Vezina trophies, and 6 Stanley Cups. But it was his mask that would change the game forever. Andrew James Bathgate was born in 1932 in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Cold country, hockey country.
Well, in Winnipeg, the kitchen was, I don't know how my mother ever cooked, because there was a hockey game going at all times.
Mrs. Bathgate's patience paid off. Andy went on to captain the junior Guelph Biltmores and lead them to victory in the 1952 Memorial Cup. That same year, Andy Bathgate pulled on the New York Rangers jersey, and so began his National Hockey League career. In 17 seasons in the NHL, the right winger would average almost a point a game, an amazing record, considering that an early accident in the juniors had almost put him out of the game.
What people forget about Bathgate, that he had played with braces on his knees almost from the first moment he arrived in the National Hockey League. Superb stick handler, superb shot, great game strategist.
Bathgate was a fast, elegant skater with a wicked slap shot, and despite formidable opposition, he was a frequent all-star selection.
When I played, the Rocket and Gordie Howard, the 2 right wingers I had to fight against to try to make the All-Star team, and the Rocket was in the league for 7 or 8 years and was automatic, Howe or Richard, or Howe, the first and second All-Star team. So when I look back, I thought, well, you know, I scored a few points, but to dislodge those fellas, they were real legends, and to sneak in a few times on them, I was very fortunate.
In February 1964, Bathgate traded jerseys. Only months later, he would win a Stanley Cup with the Maple Leafs.
Punch Imlach, who had a fondness for players who were over 30, got him towards the end of his career, and I could still see him in a playoff game. He got a breakaway and went in and scored a beautiful goal. And I remember Punch saying after the game, on a breakaway like that, who would you sooner have than Bathgate? And the answer was nobody.
Punch Imlach knew his hockey. In his heyday, Bathgate had been voted the most valuable player in the 1959 season. 2 years later, he and Bobby Hull tied as the league's leading scorers with 84 points each. Andy Bathgate, truly one of the greats.
Apart from everything else, he was probably the best golfer in the world of hockey.
If you learn to play a little rough and shade the rules a little bit, sometimes you get a little more respect. And respect gives you more room.
I remember one time we were in New York, and little Dean Prentice was going around, and Gordie was coming along with him, and all of a sudden, bingo, and Dino went down, and I said to Gordie, gee, Gordie, I said, what are you doing? You're going to kill that guy. He says, Chuck, I said, I'm sorry, and he kept going.
Gordie went by, elbowed me right in the chops, knocked me ass over tea kettle, and said, don't you ever do that again. Of course, obviously I didn't. I mean, after all, it was Gordie.
The first time that I played against Gordie, the puck got in a little mix-up, and I was fishing for it, and I got my stick under one of his skates, and I give it a yank, and down he went. He kind of glared at me. I thought, oh man, I wanted to say, I'm sorry, Mr. Howe. I didn't mean it, but I didn't. But later on in the game, he stuck me in the middle of the chest with blade of his stick, boy. Left a big welt across my chest. He had lots of room when I was out there.
The puck's shot to the corner, and I'm going to the corner to get the puck. I'm going to be the first one in there. But Gordy is right behind me, and he has one arm around me. The stick's around here. So he's right here in my ear. So as we're going in, get close to the boards, Gordy said, Red, how's the wife? And I started to turn to say, oh, she's... and whoa! He put me right through the boards almost. I left my footprints right in the boards.
We played Detroit in Detroit around Christmas time. And they had a pack house in Detroit there. And right off the bat there, when they had DeVecchio, Howe, and Lindsay, a powerful line that was, and Gordy gets a puck. They pass a puck to Gordy, and he comes down and scores a goal on me. And he says, he knew it was going in. He just said, Merry Christmas, John.
Gordie Howe was born in 1928 in Floral, Saskatchewan. He was brought up in a home, which he's proud to point out, didn't even have running water. But hauling buckets from the well was good training for a young boy who thought of little else but hockey. At school, young Gordie Howe spent every spare minute skating on frozen ponds, battling for the puck, a real boy's life, in a poor but loving family where there was no money for luxuries. Gordie's first skates were little more than someone else's cast-offs.
I think the first real pair of new skates that came my way was a pair of red Horner blades, and that was my first new ones. And I walked around the house in a little bit. I actually, if loving something is meaning that you never take your skates off, I was in love with the game. I ate my meals. My mother used to put newspapers on the floor so I could walk in, eat my meal, and get out. So, but that was a way of life for me.
When he turned 16, Gordie Howe reported to Detroit's training camp, where manager Jack Adams recognized his potential. Soon, Gordie was playing in the minors with Omaha, a Red Wings affiliate. Determined to make the top team, he tried to impress his coach with his toughness. A year later, he was sent up to Detroit, where he continued his take-no-prisoners style of play.
Jack Adams finally called me up the room. He said, young man, you cannot score from the penalty box. He says, I will not ask you to run away from a fight, but please don't go looking for it. So he put the gloves on, and thank God he did.
When Gordie arrived at Detroit from Omaha, he'd been number 17, a number he'd considered lucky. It matched his age. But after his first season with the Red Wings, it was suggested he'd like a change of number.
So the number 9 sweater was there, and our trainer came to me and he said, would you like 9? I said, no thanks. I'm very happy with 17. And he said, it'll give you a lower berth. And for those people who don't know, we used to travel by trains, and whoever had the low number slept in the lower berth, so I didn't have to climb up. So I said, I'll take it. That's how I ended up with it.
With the Detroit Red Wings, number 9 went on to greatness. Jack Adams teamed Howe with Sid Abel and the feisty Ted Lindsay on one of the greatest forward lines in the history of the game. Detroit's production line was a tough, fearless threesome that became renowned for its scoring ability. But in 1950, still basically a shy prairie boy at heart, Gordie Howe met his match.
And one of the strangest things that always occurred when we went out on a date was that everyone said hello to him and was going, oh, hi, Gordie, oh, how are you? And we'd go into a restaurant, it would happen, we'd go into a theater. And I said, gee, you know so many people. I mean, I'm just amazed. And then I felt, of course, a little dumb after I realized, and found out who he was.
When Colleen first met Gordie, she'd never even been to a hockey game. But soon, sons Marty and Mark would change all that. There would be 3 NHL hockey players in the family, and incredibly, they would play together. Gordie Howe would play hockey in the NHL until he was 52.
To me, he's still the best, one of the best I've seen. He could do everything so well, his regular shift. I've seen him on many occasions getting penalties, 4 against 4, power play, and he could be on the ice so long. The stamina, the strength, his natural ability. So if you put all those great ingredients together, that's what make a superstar like he is. He's in a class by himself, where at a level where there's not too many.
He will go down as one of the all-time great athletes in the world. It's just what he was able to do easy. Other people worked their life off to even be part of it.
He's the greatest hockey player that took him many years to earn that, but he's the greatest hockey player that I have ever seen.
He dominated the game when he was on the ice, and he dominated in a far different way than Gretzky did in his era. Gordie dominated with power.
He retired with 4 Hart trophies, 4 Stanley Cups, most games played, most goals, assists, and points. You name it, he'd won it.
A player that I might say that he's the first one to admit this, Ted Lindsay probably was one of the most hated players in the National Hockey League. But every franchise in the National Hockey League would have given their right arm for Ted Lindsay, to have him on our side.
His father had played in goal for the Renfrew Millionaires in the rough, tough early days, and Ted Lindsay, Terrible Ted, was a chip off the old block.
We all had our moments. Now, Ted had a reputation of being pretty good with a stick. There can be no question about it, he was a tremendously talented hockey player and a great competitor.
He was the leader of the Detroit Red Wings every night he went on the ice. Nobody else. He was the motivator, the leader, and he was not a big man. And his face, you can see the scars on it. I always said he's got one of those faces that holds about 3 days of rain. And, every one of them was earned because he was a little mean out there.
A lot of the viewers today wouldn't understand the athletes of our time in the 6-team league. And I'm speaking of my profession. We, the Detroit Red Wings, and I, Ted Lindsay, I hated every guy I played against. And I must say that the opposition, whether it be Toronto, Montreal, New York, Boston, Chicago, they felt the same way. And this was a feeling. It was a feeling of hate. And it's a wonderful way to play hockey. No coach ever has to get you up.
For his size, he was tough. You look at his face, and he's cut all over. He never backed out, nobody. I remember him and Rocket. It was unbelievable. Rocket used to hate his guts, to the last degree. It's because Ted Lindsay knew how to antagonize Rocket, how to make Rocket mad. Not because he hated Rocket, but all of a sudden he found something to make Rocket slow down.
Myself, I used to try to insult the Rocket. I used to try to get him so mad at me that he'd forget about playing hockey. And a lot of nights he would get that mad. And I was accomplishing what I wanted to accomplish, but I also made sure that I knew where he was and I knew what he was doing, because there was, as I said earlier, there was only one thing that there were nights that he'd love to see me dead,
Well, I had a few little scrap with him, and I hit him once in Detroit after he was calling me all kinds of names. And after I hit him, he didn't bother me anymore. But just the same, he was a good hockey player, a hard worker. That's the main thing. I enjoy watch a guy like that, no doubt about that. But I didn't enjoy to play against him.
Ted Lindsay, every building that he went, they hated his guts. Because you know what? When somebody hates your guts, it's because you're a good player, you're a dangerous player, you're a very important for your team, and they're trying to do something to you to slow you down. And that's the reputation of Ted Lindsay got. For his size, he never backed out on nobody. Nobody I can recall. He would fight anybody. He would give you body checks sometimes. They were not always clean, but that was terrible Ted Lindsay. That was his style. And he could put the puck in the net, and he could shoot, and he could skate.
The one thing that I always do know, I never got booed at Olympia, which was our home building, but I got booed on the road all the time. So all that did was just with like an adrenaline, because I knew I was doing my job right. If I was getting cheered on the road, then I know I was doing my job wrong.
Ted Lindsay was one of those guys that was a feisty player on the ice. He gave it 100% all the time, and likely one of the great left wingers, if not the best left winger of them all. When he was playing with Howe and Abel, that was a line. That was a great line, and Ted Lindsay was an integral part of that.
Ted Lindsay, who'd retire as the league's highest scoring left winger, was always a battler. But he was traded to Chicago by the fiery Jack Adams, who accused him of being a troublemaker. Lindsay's crime had been trying to organize a players' association to loosen the owner's grip over the players.
The association was formed for the benefit of hockey, for the betterment of hockey, for the fairness of hockey. You have to have a boss, you have to have an owner, you have to have rules and regulations. I understand that. But they didn't think that we were smart enough. They thought we were all dummies. And maybe that's our fault. Maybe we've let them believe that all these years. None of us would ever do anything to hurt our game. We only wanted to complement our game, but that they couldn't understand. I never thought about, worried about what people thought of me. All I do know is that when I went to play hockey, I never cheated anybody. And anybody that was sitting up in the stands, they got everything that Ted Lindsay could give them. Now there were some nights, maybe, I didn't have my skates on the right feet, but it was still the best that Ted Lindsay could give that night. I never cheated a fan, and I never ran away from anything that was my responsibility. And hopefully I was an influence to our organization and to my teammates. That's all that would ever matter to me. It was towards the end of the game. It was in the Toronto Maple Leafs end, and we had a minute and a half to go, and I heard this little squeaky voice. It was just where, at that time, there was nothing along the side. It was just the screen used to end just about where the corner of the rink started to go straight. And I look over there, and I see this squeaky Stafford Smythe, and Connie Smythe's son, and he was an idiot if there ever was one. And I see this, and of course, they drop the puck, and then there's another whistle quickly, and then I hear this squeaky voice again, and I'm working my way closer to the boards because he's getting brave. He's coming closer to the boards. He was standing against the wall, and so they drop the puck again, and for some reason there's another quick whistle, and I figured, well, he'll be getting close. So I started for the boards when I knew that the whistle had blown. And I saw him, and I swung my stick, and I went right over, and they had the one row of seats right along the boards at the Gardens. Well, I swung so hard that where my glove was, I hit the man on the head right that was sitting in that seat. And I didn't know that until a couple of weeks later, but it was either the Governor General or his assistant or something, and so I got reprimanded for that a little bit, but son of a gun, I miss Smythe.
It was an all-day deal, skating, and just loved it. And my mother would call, and I'd hear her, and I wouldn't let on in the evening when I'd have to come home. And then a sister would come over, and she couldn't catch me. And two sisters would come over, and they couldn't catch me. Maxine, Jackie, Barbara, Laura. And then my dad would have to come over. Robert, get home here. Just one more time around the ice, Dad. And away I'd go around the ice. He'd say, okay, get over these snowbanks, let's go. I said, Dad, you always told me I have to be able to skate both ways. I got to go the other way. And around the rake the other way I'd go, and then we'd head home. And this Dad would be a tired boy by nightfall.
Rocket Richard, Maurice the Rocket Richard, one of the greats of all time. It's hard to believe that he retired from hockey in 1960, but the one incident that often crops up, apart from his greatness as a fiery competitor, was that March the 17th, St. Paddy's Day, in the Montreal Forum. A couple of days earlier in Boston, in the lobby, he got mad at one of the officials, the linesman, and get a little shoving and decking. And Clarence Campbell, the then president of the National Hockey League, suspended the Rocket. And not only for the remaining games with the season, but the playoffs that year.
Certainly a huge suspension, and when it applied to Rocket Richard, that made it even bigger. The people in Montreal were in an uproar for a couple of reasons. One, it had happened to the Rocket, their mini-god, and two, since he would be suspended for the remaining regular season games, he wouldn't be in any position to win the scoring title. He was leading the scoring at that time by 1 or 2 points, and appeared set to win his first ever and only scoring title, so that washed that out. But, you know, then to be suspended for the playoffs, mon Dieu, I mean, this is awful, this is terrible.
I'm working with Al Nigler up in the radio booth at the Forum, and suddenly there's a commotion to our left where Clarence Campbell and his secretary, later became his wife, were sitting.
Here's a fan who was on the promenade, and he walks up the steps towards Clarence Campbell, who's sitting in that first seat, row 12 or 15, whatever it was, and he puts his hand out as if to shake hands with Mr. Campbell. And Clarence Campbell puts his hand out. When he does that, the fan smacks him right across the face. Now, Jimmy Orlando, who once played for the Detroit Red Wings and was one of the toughest people in the league, had seen this fan walk up the steps. And he walked up behind this fan, followed him up the steps, just in case something happened. But Jimmy was a little slow. He'd been out of practice, I guess. But the moment that this fan struck Clarence Campbell, Jimmy whipped the fan around and hit him with everything he had. With teeth and everything flying in 19 different directions.
And there's smoke coming up, like you didn't know what it was at first. Somebody that may have thought a tear gas bomb or something. And it turned out that real commotion takes place, scuffling takes place, shouting and screaming. And our French engineer hands me a note and said, you're heading for the visitors' dressing room right away. So we had a police escort from the broadcasting booth down to the visitors' dressing room when we got in. Jack Adams had received a note under the door from Frank Selke Sr. that said the game was forfeited in the interest of safety and the unruly fans that took things under their own control. The building was being emptied, period.
Being a young reporter, here's all this stuff breaking out in front of the Forum. Somebody had put a bullet through one of the windows. There were about 6,000 to 7,000 people in front of the Forum, overturning cars, setting fires. And I rushed to a payphone beside, just about a block away from the Forum, and called the city desk and spoke to the night city editor. I still remember his name, a fellow named John Maffrey. And I described the scene to him. I said, you better send somebody up here. All hell is breaking loose. There's a riot, fires, somebody fired a gun and so on. He said to me, he says, well, why don't you go out there and circulate in the crowd? I said, why don't you come up here and circulate in the crowd? And that was the end of that conversation.
We get on out to Westmount. We had to wait an hour and a half for our train because we were there too early. And we got all kinds of reports what was happening. Well, the building only seat 13,000 people. Must have been 30 or 40,000 people up and down St. Catherine Street rioting. Store windows, streetcars toppled over, taxi cabs burned. And Rocket Richard at 2 in the morning had to go on in English and French and plead with them, don't take law into your own hands. But it was an incident that Clarence Campbell, as the president, ruled with a firm hand, and the devotees of Maurice the Rocket Richard felt that it was unfair.